Sister Suzette Blunt.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here tonight. Yes, as you so well said, my name is Suzette Blunt. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Georgia, Dallas, Georgia. I attend Full Turn Church, where my pastor is Pastor Alan Mushagan and Jenny Mushagan. Let's see how I've been married for 17 and a half years to George Blunt the third, and we have six children together, three boys and three girls. A fun fact, I work with my twin sister. It's been great. We work with the Well Women Empowered for Life and Leadership, and our main purpose is to empower women to live out their God-given purpose.
All right, all right. Welcome, Sister Suzette Blunt. And then we have Brother Pastor Damon Richardson. All right, one of my good friends. Man, I'm so happy that he could join with us. And now he's going to introduce himself and tell us a little bit more about him. You're muted.
All right, here we go. Sorry about that. So yeah, this is the this is the part I hate the most, introducing myself. But I am Damon Richardson. I am the founder of Urban Logia Ministries. We are an online urban apologetics, and theological resource. I am also a national presenter for Logos Bible Software, and I currently travel itinerantly in ministry. This is my 30th year. I have pastored four different churches in three different states over my tenure in ministry. And I'm also married now 11 years, four children, and just glad to be here on this program.
All right, all right, all right. And how could I not introduce myself? So I'm Minister Philip Richards, and I'm married to the lovely Dr. Donna Richards. We have four kids together. We just actually celebrated our 11th year on April 18th. And I'm excited. I'm excited. So we're going to get right into it. And we're going to start off just by a few questions here and just talk a little bit about the COVID-19, how it's possibly affecting marriage, and how can we find new traditions. So, one of the things that I saw, I'm not sure how many people are familiar with the Red Table or seen it, watched it, or, but one of the things that they talked about on there, and she had a guest on there who happens to be their personal counselor, and they were just talking about, in this COVID season, it seemed like a lot of people are having frustration and headaches because maybe one partner, they normally don't see each other because they work probably two different jobs and different hours, and now they got to live together, see each other 24/7 now, and so that has become like more like, instead of pulling closer, people are actually pulling apart. Not only that, it's like all of a sudden it's like, whoa, you thought you knew this person, and now you got to deal with this person 24/7. And what came to my mind was, for better or for worse. And I'm like, whoa, it seemed like people forget that part of the whole process, are better and for worse. And so they're like, I don't know you, who are you? And so one of the things, how can couples find new traditions during this COVID season if you were working two jobs? Whoever want to take that question?
I, I want to defer to my sister here. Let her answer that first.
Okay. Well, I like what you said about the new, when you said new, and I think that's a good word to use. I think in marriage, we have to be open to new adventures because we're living life together. So there's always an opportunity to explore each other, I think some people believe they know everything, and you pretty much don't know much about your spouse when you really think about it. I mean, we're trying to learn even about ourselves, so there's so much more to explore about our spouse. I think when wanting to come up with something new, one of the things I do with the couples I work with is I introduce what I call a love map. And it has some questions there where they get to just find out a little more about their spouse and get a little more direction about where they are together, what they have that are similar, what are different about them, what they want to do together. Just the questions cover a gamut of things. What movie do they like the most? Just things like that. It's another opportunity to explore one another and get on the same map, so to speak. And it provides a guideline for where you want to go. And actually, if you look at a map, you want to know where you are first and then where you're going. So that's the whole idea of the love map. And you'll find out there are things you haven't explored. And I don't care how long you've been married, there's a lot to learn. It's a place of learning. So, yeah, I say when thinking about new, being open to learning something about each other is going to be very vital.
And that's key. So you're telling me the old heads who have been married for 40 years, they can learn something new.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hey,
I mean,
that's
For someone
I
married
actually have
34,
an older person that I'm counseling right now in a place of transition. She's learning some new behaviors from her husband because he's going through a
wow,
new illness. And she didn't realize it was an illness. She thought he was just being inappropriate. She's ready to throw in the towel.
wow,
But this is a new place of exploration. Where is it going to take her next? And she's in her 70s. They've been married for 40
wow,
odd years.
wow, wow. Bishop, you were saying something? All right, I think Bishop got muted. But Pastor Damian Richardson, did
yeah,
you
I
want to
was.
comment on that?
I'm not muted. I can comment.
Go ahead, Bishop.
Yeah, so I want to just add a little bit to that. It's really amazing what you can learn to be now been married 34 years. Actually, August is going to be 34 years and 4 children. But there's so many things that as we move along in life, we actually don't realize it. But there's certain things that even change with us that you can then now re-explore to see what are these changes and how we're going to handle them, how we're going to live with them. And so this has given me the COVID situation has given me a little bit more time at home that I can actually spend more time doing some of those things. And I think that's what we all need to realize, more than just we are spending time with God, of course, but we're going to definitely try to spend time with our spouses and just try to learn more and try to even make the relationship better.
Absolutely.
Amen. Pastor Damian Richardson?
Absolutely, I agree with all that has been said at this point. I would add the word discovery, which is something that couples can always do throughout the perpetuity of the marriage. Is a constant time of discovery and rediscovery, and so during this quarantine, this COVID-19 season here that we are in, I think one of the ways that this rediscovery can happen in a very practical way is just working together on things, projects that may exist around the house. And so as you work together, one of the things that naturally develops in working together is, a renewed sense of not only togetherness, but again, an affinity and just growth, what you learn about the other person, and so you end up enjoying the presence of your spouse as you begin to work together on many of these projects, maybe redesigning, redecorating, and just having some fun together. And so just this proximity forces this discovery. And so one of the things I think we fail to realize is that we will never know all that we need to know or all that we think we know about our spouse. So we'll constantly be in a state of learning, and so being in this time of proximity and togetherness, this is a good time to do what some have called one anothering. Where you start really spending time thinking about the other person. And the Bible enjoins us and encourages us to put the needs of others above that of ourselves, and so this can be a great time for one anothering. And so I'll give you permission to use that phrase there. So
I'm certainly going to take that one. And that brings me to my next question, because with this time of craziness and the pandemic that's going on, um, either both people in the marriage have lost a job or one is not working. It's bringing a financial strain. What are some of the tools that couples now can use so that they're not fighting? Because we know the average of divorce rate is actually high when it comes on to finance. And so, what are some of the things that couples can implement now to see that maybe it's one income coming in or both incomes are lost, so that they're not bickering and fighting amongst each other to survive? What are some things that can be done?
well, I think what one of the things that can be done practically is, let's in a scenario where there's only one income coming in now because let's say the one spouse has been laid off, or maybe they've been let go due to budget cuts on their job or what have you. One of the practical things that can be done is that the working spouse can encourage the now at home spouse to do some creative things whereby income opportunities might occur. For instance, I know of some who have made masks, and in fact, my wife took advantage of doing that as well, and she actually started out doing it for free, and made so many of them, and then inevitably opportunities to profit from that. People started offering even to pay for them, and then of course many people in the school district officially started ordering them. And now she's working, but I'm saying there's an example of how here's some income generating revenue stream that can happen just by the encouragement of one spouse, just encouraging again the other spouse to capitalize on whatever their strengths are, and look for opportunities to be creative. And when listen, there's no harm in this. Whenever there is a crisis or whenever there is a need, there's always an opportunity for profit. There's no harm in that. Obviously, when profiting becomes the number one thing, and you're obviously taking advantage of people's needs, then that's ill motivated. But the reality is that crisis, creates needs, and needs gives, creates opportunity for, economic revenue stream. And so I think spouses can encourage the non-working spouse to find their strength and seize upon opportunities during this time to use those strengths to be a blessing to the family. And and even if that's not the case, what about just maximizing at home opportunities, maybe with the children or educational needs there in the home? Sometimes being a blessing in the home is not always bringing in income. Sometimes it's just paying attention to other areas of need that may require some additional attention. So
Absolutely. If I may piggyback on that, I love that he went into that area of exploration again because I think with the financial matters, it always boils down to communication and how you handle conflict. I think it's not so much about the amount of conflict, but just how it is handled. And so if they both can find a way to meet and be specific about what the problem is and what the areas of needs are, like he mentioned. And again, it is an opportunity to explore what are our strengths and what do we have. We can't focus on what we don't have control of, but what do we have in our power to do right now to help our situation? What goals do we have and how can we meet them? And I think it's just important to be specific about the needs and create some short-term goals in order to feel as if you're going somewhere, because it can be frustrating when you think everything is turning upside down and it's overwhelming, and so you need to set a time to discuss how are we going to make it through this season. What do we need to attack right now, because we can't attack every problem at the same time.
Yeah, it's a good time to kind of just reorganize. And I know a lot of time as religious people would tell people to pray. Praying is fine and it's important, but you need to also make some time to come together, look at the issues, look at the situation, and then see how best together you can attack them. And I think this is really a good time to reconnect. Even look over your goals, your objectives, and the plans that you have. Of course, put God in your plan, but have some plan and come up with a strategy. Thank you. Okay. All right, Philip, I think we're frozen there. All right,
You
brother
have
Philip, you're hearing us
some
still?
form of goal that you wanted to reach. And I think that's
All right, I think we lost a little bit of connection. Can everybody hear?
Yes.
Yeah, I think brother Philip, Minister Philip, I think is a little frozen there. So we'll try. Is he back? All right. So once till he comes back, I think it's really good to explore and just
Mhm.
find ways that we're going to deal with things. And I think it's so important. And I think I heard some really good ideas. Planning strategies, doing things together. Because believe it or not, a lot of couples have drifted apart and has not
Yeah.
really been there working together to bring about what they need. So just talk a little bit. Anybody, any more other ideas we have about what they can do together to kind of come together and plan out how they're going to move forward.
I think budgeting is going to be very vital. I mean, budgeting has always been a good tool. It's like mapping out a guide, and it doesn't mean you're poor if you're budget. Budgeting is just for everyone. It's a wise thing to do. So again, you have a guideline to help you navigate the issues concerning your finances. And one of the things I would like to say when it comes to finances, I think it is good to really focus on who has the strengths in what areas, because this is where you want to be able to allow your partner to influence you. And I guess this is where humility comes in. We can't allow ego to stop the progress of the entire family. So if your partner is stronger in something, it is important that you allow them to exercise those strengths and be humble in that area. And whether you're male or female, it's important to have that spirit of humility in marriage. And it is an act of love for a man to say, "I'm going to give you this job because you're really good at it," and vice versa. So there's no ego when it comes to just what you want for the relationship. The ego should not be the thing that stands in the way.
All right, Minister Philip, you're back.
Yes, yes,
All right, go ahead.
yes.
Go ahead with your
Some
question now. We didn't hear that one yet.
yes, some technical stuff, but we're back. We're back. Well, first of all, I got a text that I said I have 4 kids. That is not a announcement for 2 more. That is not okay. I only
Oh
got
my.
2, and there is no more coming. All everything
I
is
heard the
shut down.
announcement, but I thought he was prophesying. I thought he was
No,
prophesying
no,
when I heard the announcement.
the oven
Oh my
has
God.
been closed. There's no more. No more. I got 2, and that's all. All right. So we're gonna jump right into the next one. I just had to clarify that to make you guys. There's no more announcements. Okay. There's only 2. All right. And so this is another tough questions that I think we should definitely touch on. So in marriage, we know that there's some things that can come to try and separate the marriage, and so if there's one of the partners that's in the marriage that's struggling with something, whether it be pornography or struggling, what are some of the things now that that partner can do to try to strengthen now first themselves to be able to stop doing that. And we, like Bishop just said, sometimes we use the phrase, let's just pray about it. But I believe that affects the marriage now, because now your partner is no longer your main attraction. You have introduced
Mhm.
something inside your marriage now that can cause friction and potentially cause a divorce. And so, what are some of the things that Suzette, how would you counsel someone that is in the marriage? And it could be both. It could be the female or the male, because the
Right.
misconception is always it's the male. We know predominantly it might be the male, but sometimes there's other distraction, or not just pornography. It could be unfaithfulness. Somebody, how can
Absolutely.
forgiveness and reconciliation take place in a marriage? I know it's a lot.
Okay. Yes, it's very heavy, but yes, this issue has come up time and time again in my encounter with couples. The issue of pornography, first of all. Actually, I'm going through that right now with a couple, but it's important that first of all we understand, or the person who is in the act of pornography understand that it is um, inappropriate for the marriage, and it is first of all a sin against God, but it does create issues for the couple. And so if he can acknowledge that it is wrong, first of all, then they can make progress, or he or she. I'm not, in this case I'm dealing with a man, but it's important that they first acknowledge that this is an issue. um, and also, we want to explore how did they come to an understanding of sex individually, and let them talk about what it means in the marriage. Because everyone may have been taught, being given a different idea about what it was before they entered into the marriage, and they have a completely perverted view of intimacy. And so it's important to have those conversations because it ties into your covenant and your relationship with God. All of these actions, whether it be porn or infidelity, is going to affect your walk with God and your marriage. So first identifying that it is an issue, and then in order for reconciliation to happen, um, in allowing forgiveness to take place, the person who is not on the side of the offense has to go through a process of forgiveness. It doesn't happen instantly for everybody. And I think the partner who has done the offense needs to understand that forgiveness does not mean you forget right away. It does not mean that. There
Mhm.
is going to be a process towards unraveling the emotional hurt that came from the offense. And so even that person who is hurt, it's important for them to um, recognize that they have been hurt. Because some of us,
Yeah.
especially being Christian, we want to bury that we're offended. We don't want to say, this hurt me and I just forgive you. So we don't explore the emotional baggage that comes with the hurt. And so it's important that as a therapist, I explore those emotional hurt and walk through it until they make a clear and sound decision. Wow, I really forgive you. I can make a decision to trust you again. And so that is over a process of time.
Yep. And how important is it to want to forgive you? How important to time really come to grips with the situation and let them deal with it in their own way? How important it is to not push your spouse to say, you know what, I got over it, and is that true humility?
Exactly. You're saying the right words right there. It is important to give them that space and that time. And the boundaries, emotional boundaries, are important even in marriage. And hearing what your partner needs is so valuable, so
Yeah.
valuable. And there's nothing that can cover it up. You need to be prayerful, but your act of prayer doesn't cover up or negate what else needs to happen.
That's true.
Yeah, that's true.
Okay,
I mean,
so
and the thing that we understand is, and I think our other guest said it earlier, that really you're there really to bring about the best in the next person, to support them
yes,
and be there for them, and you're thinking about them more than yourself. So especially, especially if say you were in a fault, then you should really be going more than above to try to help the other person to get to the place where they can, then forgiveness can come into it. And I think a couple of good points I heard was we have to identify the issue. The person with the offender need to repent and talk to God, work things out for themselves. Then they need to come together with the other person where they can have a discussion, be humble, and work it through, because that's the only way it's going to happen. That's why a lot of times it does not happen, and we have a big split because nobody is willing to be humble and just to engage, and then you can bring God in prayer together to work it out.
Absolutely.
All right. We lost Brother Philip. Minister Philip, you there? I think we keep losing him there. So we'll keep on with the conversation till he picks in. So as soon as you're in, Brother Philip, Minister Philip, say something so we know you're connected. Not sure he is. All right. So anyway, we'll go on with the discussion. All right, go ahead. Go ahead. All right. I think we still don't have him.
Okay.
All right. So what we can do is we can just look at it, and we see there's a lot of those issues.
One of the things, so that brings me to my next.
All right, so we lost him completely. All right, so what we need to do is, I wanted to do a little bit as we go forward, is just practically, give some practical suggestions, for people, especially since he brought up that one topic. I mean, and again, I see it both in my medical practice and as the pastor, is a lot of those issues are there. And I think a lot of time, as a few people mentioned, people are not willing to acknowledge, the issue, and then to be able to work it out. So I think I heard, so any more things that we can tell people to do anytime there's any conflict, whether it's, infidelity, but whatever conflict comes up, conflict with dealing with the children, conflict with everything, how can we best, approach it as people of God, number one, but also as humans? How can we best approach that?
Yeah, so I definitely think that some of the practical steps that can be taken to dealing with some of the issues, for instance, the issue that we were talking about before is one of the worst things that can be done is spiritualizing the issue. And, Christians are often very fond of spiritualizing things, not that things don't have a spiritual component, but to spiritualize something is essentially the same as over spiritualizing it. It is essentially accrediting more spiritual causation to a thing than is necessary or is even required. And so, you know, spiritualizing can take away some of the responsibility in whatever the issue is. I think another thing is that when you're dealing with issues, you know, whether it be you know, infidelity or some, you know, pornography was mentioned, and a number of things like that, where one of the persons in one of the spouses in the relationship feels violated. Several things that I would suggest is number one, the you know, we talked about boundaries, and so boundaries going forward in this means that you got to recognize that whereas one person is the violated, the other person is the violator, and so the violated can't turn around and be the counselor and be violated at the same time. So that's not going to be helpful in terms of some of the strategies that are needed in helping the other person get the help that they need. You can't be violated and also be the counselor. So that's one of the things is that the other person is going to need some accountable relationships so that they can be helped. Those accountable relationships may involve a level of transparency and honesty that the violated is not in a good position to even be able to handle. So that's why I'm saying you can't be the violated and be the counselor at the same time. So the person trying to get help needs to be able to be honest, and there's a level of transparency and honesty which might uncover some things that the violated is not ready to hear. But at the same time, the catch-22 is the violator needs to be able to put these things, to get these things out, because what ends up happening is that addictions thrive in secrecy. That's how they take grip, in secrecy. So the violated needs to be able to have those accountable relationships, those trusted relationships, wherein they can be honest without fear of you know, judgment, so to speak. You know, and obviously that cannot come from the other spouse who is the violated. So I think that's really important to understand. Now here is something that the violated can help the violator with, and that is understanding what that person's triggers are. Right, so everybody has triggers. So in a mental health sense, when it comes down to certain kinds of addictions, whether it's drugs or even pornography, there's an acronym that they call HALT, HALT, which stands for hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. Those are four very common triggers that causes people to relapse into whatever behavior it is that they have become trapped in and addicted to. But those are not the only four triggers. There are quite a number of others. Sometimes people you know, get upset or they become frustrated, and then they start feeling lulled. They start feeling this sense of insecurity, and then that becomes a trigger either to go back into drinking or whatever it is. And so the violated can help the violator to recognize their triggers, and even to recognize that, you know, you probably want to get ahead of this train before those triggers start pushing you, and encouraging them to reach out to their accountable relationships or their lifelines as they help them recognize, those triggers. They can see them coming and say, hey, you know, I'm noticing this. You probably want to call brother or sister so-and-so and go ahead and talk about it. So that is definitely something that can be done as well. And I'll say this lastly. I think sometimes some honest conversation around how sometimes one spouse can not necessarily be the cause of, but the contributor to another spouse's behavior. Now that's an important demarcation and distinction to make. Cause and contributor are not necessarily the same thing, right? I may not cause your behavior, but I need to be able to recognize ways in which I might contribute to it, because being a contributor still makes me somewhat complicit, right? And so I've got to take some responsibility for that. And so sometimes, I mean, let's just be honest. There are all kinds of unhealthy attitudes about sexuality or sex, rather, in the church. I mean, going all the way back to Augustine, who saw sex as, almost a necessary evil, and since that time, you're talking about since the fifth century, the church has really struggled with proper biblical perspectives and
Yes.
attitudes towards sex. And so, I mean, let's just be honest here. I think that's what we're on here for. Let's just be honest. Sometimes there's one spouse may actually contribute to another spouse's because oftentimes one spouse may not feel like sex is really that important after all, and all these different kinds of issues that can come up. And listen, here's the deal, folks. I mean, here's the deal, right? If if contributing to another person's um, illicit behavior is not real, then Paul would not have mentioned in 1 Corinthians 7 when he talked about fasting and praying and going away from the other spouse for a time, that is abstaining from sex. Remember, he says to make sure you do it for a short time, lest Satan enter in. So if there's no possibility, then there would have been no reason for Paul to make that kind of a disclaimer. The fact is, whenever one spouse is not doing their due diligence in the relationship, it can create and contribute to unfaithfulness and things like that. Now, the one person may not want to admit that. Like I said, there's a difference between causation and contribution. But the fact is, you can contribute. And you don't want to give the devil that kind of foothold by not having regular, healthy sex life. I mean, the stats. The stats is basically, essentially, sex and money are the two top causes of decline, deterioration, and even divorce in marriages. And so this is a healthy thing. Stop listening to folks on social media talking about how unimportant sex is and all that other stuff. Listen, for men, it's as important as food and breathing. And play with it if you want to, but it's a fact. It is an appetite. And so it is important to make sure that the marriage has that healthy component to it, and that you're not spiritualizing, and you're recognizing, of course, ways in which you might, in ways that you have not recognized before, you might be contributing to the other spouse's behavior. So I know I was a little long-winded there, but I had to get it out, had to kind of make sure that my thoughts came together.
Yes,
Good.
and I that was actually my next question, and you jumped right into it. 1 Corinthians 7 from 1 to 16. And I know there's a lot surrounding that, and you kind of covered one part of it already. But it also talks so keenly about when one partner separates from the other. And so that has been used as a scripture to keep people in bondage. Now, as it pertains to domestic violence, and a female is running for her life. And so because this man has beaten her, he's taken advantage of her. I've seen church circle use that as, because the man left, she has to stay in bondage and she can't get remarried. What is your take on that? And it could be anyone who wants to take that, because I've seen it happen where, so what was Paul really saying? Because at the end of the day, are we encouraging people to stay in an abusive marriage where they literally are fearing their life? Or it could be, again, the spouse was unfaithful and the female says, no, I don't want to stay in this marriage. What was Paul really saying here?
Yeah, so if I could tackle that for a second, I mean, it's a huge discussion, and of course, we wouldn't all have time to be able to unpack it in this short segment. But let me just start off saying this: there's certain things that have to be understood looking at this text as a prerequisite in thinking, and that is that we have to again recover and retrieve a value for the people in the relationship, and not and I'm saying above the institution of marriage itself. Let me slow down and say that again so you can understand what I mean. We have to retrieve and recover a value for the people in the marriage above the institution of marriage itself. Now, I'm not saying that we ought to devalue marriage. What I am saying is that there is a priority here. If you're following Jesus' teaching, one of the things that Jesus did is he prioritized people above institutions. So Jesus never violated the Sabbath. He just taught that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Hence, if human needs arose on the Sabbath, according to Jesus, you deal with the human need. And if that means that you've got to lift your brother up out of a ditch, even if you've got to lift your own donkey out of the ditch, lives are more important than institutions. Legalism comes in and elevates the institution above the person. And this is how you end up with people telling folk to go back into situations whereby they are being oppressed and abused. And that abuse may not be physical even. I mean, let's not underestimate the impact of emotional scars whereby a person is verbally abused and they are subjected to that type of abuse. Persons they are under no obligation to remain in situations whereby their lives are being devalued. They are in no, God has, by way of the Imago Dei, he has indelibly impressed into our humanity a dignity that is to be preserved and to be protected. Marriage is not designed to under or devalue that dignity. It is designed to promote it and to accentuate it, to push it forward, to celebrate it. But when marriage turns into a hostage situation, I don't care what your bishop is saying. Every human being, like they have the right to preservation, to protect their lives, like go get a gun and make sure that the person trying to get in can't get in. Every person has a right to protect themselves in situations whereby the marriage now has become a hostage situation. It has become oppressive, so forth and so on. And so there is nothing in this text of 1 Corinthians chapter 7, nor is it in Matthew 19 or Mark 5, or anywhere in Scripture where the Bible sees marriage as a hostage situation, a type of prison, whereby a person has no recourse of escape, that they've got to sit there and they've got to take it. And so just as David fed his men from the table of showbread, which was highly irregular, the idea is that that the person's life has greater value than the institution. That was not only true of the Sabbath, but it was also true of the tabernacle, and it is most definitely true of marriage. And as much as we ought to lift up marriage as an institution of God, we have to recover and the values of the persons in the marriage beyond the institution of marriage itself, because two people's marriage failing doesn't destroy the institution. The institution is okay just because your situation didn't work out. So I'd rather both of y'all live than be in the situation because you think that's what church folk want y'all to do, and then one of y'all loses your life because y'all been trying to stay together and make sure you don't have a D in the column for divorce, because that's what you think church folk want you to do. Now, I'm not encouraging folks to divorce, but I am saying that certainly 1 Corinthians 7 is not some prohibition against it, if that's how it is being interpreted.
Definitely.
And Sister Suzette, on because I'm pretty sure you have maybe seen domestic violence. I mean, how would you counsel such a one that is going through such a situation, especially if they're Christians?
Can I just make a comment before she? Can I make a comment before she give a treatment? It's really interesting that, it's funny. I was reading somewhere in John 7, and some of these people are so hypocritical because remember now, they were circumcising on the Sabbath. If your 8-day ended up on the Sabbath, they would still circumcise you, okay? So we need to really be realistic and just face up with humans and deal with humans on that level and put everybody's life at really a high standard in the face of God. And so it's really making sure everybody is fulfilled. And listen to me, I'm one of those I've been married for almost 34 years, and I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen people married 40 years come to a standpoint where I told them to divorce, okay, because they were going to kill each other. So, you tried to resolve it, and you couldn't resolve it. So we just have to deal with each human. Go ahead. Okay, Sister
Yes.
Cynthia.
I really love everything that has been said, and it's been said well. So I'm not even going to even try to go back over any of that. But I think that with my therapist hat, when if somebody comes to me and they're in danger, it's my duty to warn or to report if I see somebody's life is in danger. And I'm very upfront about that. And if a woman or a man is in an abusive situation, the first thing I want to do is create a crisis and safety plan. And so all my alerts are up, and I'm just wanting to get them help. So my main prerogative is not to save this institution at that moment. Of course, I'm praying, and depending on the conflict, but in an abusive situation, the higher priority is the person's safety.
Mm.
And it's nothing to do with, okay, how are we going to keep this marriage together? That's not even on my mind. My first thought is, how can I get this person to safety?
Mhm.
Yep.
I think a
Yep.
lot of times the attitude of how do I keep this marriage together is what gets a lot of people in trouble. The attitude should
Yes.
be how do we make sure everybody is fulfilled, everybody's safe, everybody is fulfillment in their life with Christ. Because see, when we can help each one, that's when we can then put back together. But if you're just trying to,
Absolutely.
okay, I'm going to cover everything up and put it together, then you're not going to work.
Amen.
And I think Pastor Richardson also talked a few weeks ago about the salvation marriage, and like you could go over to his page and kind of look at what he was saying, because some of those marriages, man, they're literally divorced in the mind, but they're just staying together to look good on paper. And that whole tradition has got to change, because we're telling people, hey, you are so and so in the church, so you can't get a divorce, even though he's finished preaching and then he goes home to smack the woman or beat this woman. And we can't put a spiritualization on things like that, because then if you really love your wife, how can you then treat her in that respect? And that brings me to my next point. um I heard a very famous bishop literally was trying to explain again Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 4. And it was crazy, because one of the things that was said there is that because when you're in your bedroom, you can say whatever to your wife, because the marriage bedroom is undefiled. And so I got perturbed by that, because I was like, this scripture is being used out of context. He said you could call your wife whatever in the bedroom, and you could just go wild and crazy. And I'm like, that scripture has no context, no, it's like, what are you talking about? You can't call your wife derogatory name in the bedroom or outside of the bedroom. And so, Pastor Richardson, I know where we can break the scripture down in so many different aspects, but really and truly, what was really being said here? What was the writer trying to convey? Because I know for sure it was not to just call your wife whatever name because you're behind closed doors.
Gotcha. So, I think it's worth reading the text. Sometimes, the fastest way to correct, misconception or error, hermeneutical or exegetical error, is to start reading it in context. And so, one of the things it says here let's just look at it in context. Verse 4 says marriage is to be honored, right? So this is referring to the behaviors, or the not the act of marriage, but obviously the ongoing behavior in marriage. It is to be honored. This is the way that it is to be regarded and treated during the course of the marriage. And so marriage is to be honored. And then it says, it doesn't say, and the bed is undefiled. That might be the King James reading. It literally reads, and the marriage bed kept undefiled. So this is an admonition against introducing into the marriage infidelities, third parties. Notice the next text says, because God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterers. So obviously, bestiality, incest, homosexuality, and all of the things that have been described in Scripture as prohibited sexually are to remain outside of the bedroom. So that is literally what Paul is talking about. He says the bed is to be, the word for bed there is obviously a metaphor for the sexual component in the marriage. He's saying it is to be honored. And then in a parallel way of saying that, he says it is to be kept undefiled. Both of those are making the same statement in reverse. It is to be honored, and it is to be kept undefiled. That is, married couples are to keep out of the marriage sexually impure things. That would be like introducing, obviously, pornography into the relationship, or introducing a third or fourth person into the relationship, making it a triangle or something, or whatever. These kinds of things. So at that point, the ethic, the sexual ethic that we're working with is what we already know that the Bible has said about sex and sexuality. So the Bible has been very, very clear and explicit about what it has prohibited sexually. Now, marking that as true, it is also important that we not go beyond what the Bible has said about things that are sexually prohibited, and then try to hold people's marriages to things that we particularly don't like in terms of our own preferences. And so, I don't want to go too far, but you catch my drift.
Yep.
What I am saying, you see what I'm saying? It's not for me to go beyond Scripture and then tell you guys what y'all can't do, as long as it has not been prohibited in the Word of God. And you are honoring your spouse, right? You got to be honoring your spouse in it. If it is, if it is something that you can consciously say is honoring my spouse in that sexual expression, then nobody can then take a black and white approach to ruling out what you can accept into your marriage bed. Again, we got to work with what the Scripture has said first. Let's rule out all of the prohibitions and all of the things that are not God honoring. And so that's moving from black and white to gray. And then once you're in that gray area, as long as you can answer the question that this expression is God honoring, it is in the context of love, right? Then it is okay for you guys to do in the context of your marriage bed. And so I think that other part needs to be brought out, because there's a whole lot of church folks who like trying to be the police and be governing what folks can do in their marriage bed that goes way beyond what the Bible has said. So I'll stop right here.
And I just wanted to add, I think a lot of time the Scripture is totally misunderstood. And I really think you hit the point. And actually, one translation that I was reading and was researching, it talked about the marriage bed is to be kept pure. And see, that kind of encompasses, what you're saying. And I tell you, a lot of people cause a lot of marriages, a lot of churches, let's put it that way, I'll be blunt, marriages to separate because they try to put restrictions on people on what they can or can't do. But as you're right, as long as you're first honor God, making sure that you're doing and following the scriptures, then what goes on in the bedroom then is between you and your spouse.
I also like that the verbs are used here, keeping it
Hmm.
undefiled. It is you're using verbs because it's a process. It is a continuing. It's something you continue to work on. Marriage is a place of learning. It's a sacred institution between two people who sometimes come in the marriage with crazy behaviors that they didn't know that existed until they met each other. It's all of these things that come to the surface. And it is really like you have a mirror in front of you and you're learning about the things that you didn't know that was inside of you. And then you become that covering for that person. And it's really what we say, that type of relationship with Christ, because, and we could go all the way deep into it about the love of God and how he covers a multitude of sin. His blood covers a multitude of sin. But marriage is really that sacred institution that there's going to be a lot that's uncovered as far as the stuff that comes up that are not pleasant. And you have to be able to love your spouse. And it's as if you're loving from a place of agape love, and that romantic stuff comes as well as a benefit in marriage. And there's obviously no place for immorality because, as I said, as love matures, it's also like you're doing a relationship with God at the same time. It's like we know we can't continue this way in sin because it's not it's not going to feed my marriage in the right way, and it's not beneficial for my relationship with God, which supersedes anything else. And it's like what we talked about before. It's about the individual also more than just the institution. How's my relationship with God, and will this that I decide to do be against God? And so if I can do it if it's not something that I could do in my relationship with God, that's going to be put a partition between me and God, and nothing can divide his love from me. But when I say a wedge between us, just that sin. If I'm going to partake in sin with my spouse, what's the difference if I'm partaking in sin outside of my marriage? And so, yeah, we cannot indulge in things that would be um, immoral, like having what's immoral. I don't have to spell it out. And also, it's that boundary again for the married couple to understand what works for them. It's sex was created for the couple to really enjoy each other and celebrate in ways that maybe they haven't explored, and no one on the outside can tell them how to go about that.
Yep. Yep. And
So in the presence of conflicts when it comes to sex, they have to decide what is going to be working for them, and what's going to be at the level or the standard that it doesn't disrupt their relationship with God.
and that also segment into my next question. And I'm not sure if there's anyone on Facebook that have a question. Remember, you can just post your comments there so that we can take some quick questions at the end. But one of the things is how important it is now, especially for people who are viewing that are getting ready to get married and never talked about anything, never talked about sex, and they're coming in the relationship with unrealistic things. They're thinking this is going to happen every day, every night, 5 times, 10 times a day. And how important it is now to really, and I know sometimes some of the churches that are a little bit tougher, you can't go to your pastor and talk, oh, you are sinning. You should not be talking about, no, you're about to get married. This is real life. And so how important now, and would you advise, because sometimes people are getting some advice and you're like wondering what type of advice, what do you think marriage is, and so they're going in thinking this is going to be, because they never spoke about it. There was no counseling to really get into the nitty-gritty of what you're about to deal with, what you're in, and so they're going with unrealistic expectations. They get into marriage and the female is saying to them, nah, bro, this is not going to go down like this. What are some of the things that you would say to such a one that is looking to get married, never talk to anyone, their pastor don't want to talk to them about the realisticness about being married? What would you say to someone like that?
Well, I'll chime in first. I'm a very big advocate of premarital counseling. I mean, if I knew what I know now, I would have went into intense counseling prior to marriage. So I am learning from experience as well. And not just, so I'm not speaking just as a professional, but there's so many tools out there to help prepare couples now. And the one such tool I will emphasize here is what I've been using recently called Prepare Enrich. And there are other types of assessments out there to help couples to identify the areas of weakness and strengths. They look at the entire background. It's a comprehensive assessment. And there's also others out there like Symbis, but I'm familiar with Prepare Enrich, and it really provides a lot of details about the individual background, and they're able to walk through a lot of the potential pitfalls that they can encounter. You can't ever be completely prepared because no matter what, marriage is going to be a step of faith regardless. But in preparation, it's important that they have some awareness of, okay, where do we differ? Or where do we have similarities, and where do we build on our strengths, and what are the areas of weaknesses that can create potential serious issues in the marriage as it pertains to sex and every aspect of the relationship. Because it boils down to how do we communicate about any of this? We have to be able to communicate, whether we're communicating about sex or finances. Those are some of the most common issues, but it boils down to how do we communicate. And so even gaining some tools about communication helps a great deal. Just understanding how your different filters affect the way you communicate effectively. And so these are going to be important measures to take before you enter marriage. So I even came up with a whole course some time ago for one of my courses recently, and it's about marriageability traits. I would love to teach them, listen, you really got to know what you're getting into. What are the things about you that is going to affect him, and vice versa. And so it's just important. Like, I cannot stress it enough.
Pastor Richardson or Bishop?
Yeah, well, I think she hit all of the high points. As a matter of fact, I will not marry anybody who I didn't counsel. I'm actually or didn't go through some professional counseling, and it's amazing. And I am aware of the Symbis and a couple of the other tools that we can use, and I have my own tools as well that we use. But one of the things I really think everybody must be counseled. They need to hit the high top. We need to at least go over those hot topics with them, and then they have to make a commitment that they will communicate and that they will always try to come up with a plan. If you can't come up to that and make that commitment, then I don't really think you can get it. Because remember now, we're talking about everybody who's falling in love, fine, fall in love, but you better be committed that you're going to work through those situations when they come up. And so really, marriage is really such an important thing that we cannot just step into it lightly, but we must make the proper preparation so that it can happen and everything can go on properly.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I would say, I guess I would have this to say, a couple of things for people who are looking to get married. They are becoming interested in another person, maybe moving towards engagement, obviously advancing towards marriage. I would say definitely you want to make sure that you kind of check some of your ideology around that whole process, because I think one of the greatest problem, and because people often talk about the divorce rate being high in the church, so forth and so on. Let me say this: number one, that's a myth. The stats actually show that committed committed Christians have a lower divorce rate than anybody in the country. So that's a number one.
Wow.
But it doesn't mean, however, that Christians don't end up divorced. I think one of the main contributors to that is not necessarily what happens in the marriage, but what happens before. And I think, let's just be honest, some folks should have never got married. And the reason that they ended up getting married is because of some bad info,
That's true.
right?
Yeah.
So if we can eliminate the bad info, then we can save a lot of divorces, because we would save some folks from ever having got married to whoever they got married to in the first place. And one of the things that creates that contributes to that, is that I would call this fatalistic kind of idea that God is the one that picks your spouse. Listen, that is false doctrine. God doesn't pick your spouse. You got picked. I'm sorry. I know that's, spiritually in vogue, and it seems sexy to make it seem like God gave you the dream and told you who to marry, but it ain't no Bible for that. It's no Bible for that. The Bible says what God has joined together, not who, what.
Come on.
That is male and female. He was the only two who's that God ever put together was Adam and Eve. And he put the two who's together to establish the one what? And that is marriage on the basis of one man and one woman. After that, it's whosoever will, right? So what we've got to start looking at now is, how do we start making better informed choices? So let's get the over spiritualization out of it. God's not telling you who to marry. That's false doctrine. And the sooner you lose that, then the sooner you're going to start taking ownership and responsibility for your choice. Because watch this. If I put my brain in park because I'm thinking God's the one who's chosen for me, then I don't have any responsibility for looking at any of the red flags. Because if God already picked them out, how could God not see the red flag? So I have nothing to worry about.
Wow.
Right? I have nothing to worry about. Yeah. So that doesn't even make any real sense. It's not even logical to even think that way. And so let's lose that whole deal. I think the other thing is that when it comes down to having that conversation about sex, you had better have that conversation, and you had better have that conversation as many times as you can, and literally put all the cards on the table. Because listen, let's just be honest, folks. If you get married to some, just like we talk about being unequally yoked spiritually, if you get married to folks that you are incompatible with, especially around the deal breakers, you're going to be an unhappy camper, right? So listen. So a lot of men are obviously highly sexually driven. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the way God designed us, right? So listen, sister, if you got a low sex drive, you better find you somebody that's got a low sex drive. Because somebody that's looking for 5 or 10 times a week, and you're looking for 1 or 2 times a month, you're just literally pushing that fella into somebody else's arms. And don't try to be spiritual about it. The problem is that you just were not sexually compatible with that guy. Y'all should have never, and you got to be honest. Stop trying to secure the bag and be honest. If you know you really don't care about sex, stop trying to marry somebody, because sex is an important part of marriage. Just because you want to get married, don't try to secure the bag and then leave the man holding the weight, because you know you really had no intentions on living up to your end of the deal sexually. That's dishonest. In fact, that's defrauding another person. In fact, that person should divorce you. They should divorce you because you were dishonest from the jump. And that's a lot of things that's something that oftentimes that we as the church, we don't want to really talk about that part. But do not defraud another person, especially when it comes down to their deal breakers. If they told you, like, these are non-negotiables for me, don't lie about that. Be honest. Now everybody can work with there's obviously some negotiables that we can all work with. If I can get a 70-30 out of the deal, I'm good. I know I'm never going to get 100%. But that 70% that I feel is non-negotiable, I need to keep that at 70%, not 65, not 60. I need to know, because these things are important to me, that you're good on that. And then your non-negotiables, I need to be good on that as well. What a lot of people do, and that's why having these conversations are important, is because people get into marriages and they haven't really discussed their non-negotiables. They danced around it because they were too afraid that because they like that person might end up, not necessarily meeting one of those negotiables. And so they tried to ignore it, dance around it. Then you get into the marriage and find out that this person is constantly, running through these red lights, and now you upset. Well, no, 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 no. You got to have those conversations way before you pull the trigger. And so I just really think that having some real honest, candid conversations about sex and money and family building, folks will say, how we do. I mean, let's just be honest. People will always put their best foot forward. Church folks too. It's just how we are wired. And people will say what they think you want to hear in order to secure the bag. That's not what needs to happen in premarital conversation. We need to be able to put all the chips on the table and have some honest conversation about some things, because I don't want to find out after we get married that you really didn't want to have kids, that you just told me that because you knew that's what I wanted to hear. And you thought I was going to be okay with adoption? No. I might be okay with adoption if you can't have any, but don't try to trick me into. You understand what I'm saying? And so these are the kinds of things that we really need to have honest conversation about. And I believe that a lot of people will end up realizing that the person that they thought they wanted to marry probably is not the best person to marry. And then you can get on your business, get on to the business of discovering somebody that is more suitable and more compatible for you, as opposed to romanticizing the whole idea of marriage. Romanticizing marriage is not going to help you in the long run. It's just going to get you in a whole lot of pain and trouble down the stretch. And we all know about that. So there you go.
Yeah, can I quickly add quickly just to that? I love that. I love everything you said, because we do have to put everything on the table. But as it pertains to sex, sometimes there's some things obviously that are going to come up after you get married, especially if you weren't sexually active. And actually, some statistics do show that women may enjoy sex just as men, but it's maybe their approach to it might be different. And so sometimes some of the problems that may come up in a marriage, like right now, again, another couple can come to mind where the man is having an issue because he's lacking confidence in that area. So sometimes there are underlying issues that are preventing performance or the desire. And so the couple also needs to work and understand the underlying issues that prevent that wonderful gift from happening. from them unwrapping that beautiful gift that God gave them. And so there's so many different things to tap into, but this is why you have resources. You have sex counselors. So I just want to put that out there for couples who may be dealing with that issue even in their marriage right now, that don't sit there thinking you cannot get help. Like, really reach out for help. It's here for you.
Yeah, I think it's very, very, that's very true and important. And I think that comes back to communication, and be willing to be open with one another. So of course you can identify whatever issues, whatever problems that then arise, and then also not be too spiritual, as we hear, that you can go to a counselor, because trust me, most of the pastors cannot deal with this. I'm telling you, most of them will not even want to open their door. If you come to the door and you knock and you tell them about sex, they'll lock their door in your face. So you need to be willing to really to seek the help where you can get it. We do have a couple questions. I'm going to pose one. One says, what would you say to young couples who do not know the demands of intimacy? Everybody heard my question?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, the preparation.
They probably need to parse that question out just a little bit more.
Yeah. So, what would you say to young couples who do not know the demands of intimacy?
So I think what she's probably was asking is that especially inexperienced people that are possibly virgins are or maybe one partner is experienced, the other partner is not experienced, and
Yes.
how do they discuss that type of conversation or frequency or things like that?
Again,
Well,
premarital
that's
counseling.
really good. If I could answer that, I would definitely say I think in a number of ways we've all touched on the answer to that question, and that is that they're about to make a very they're about to make one of the most important decisions in life, and that decision is also an investment. What goes along with investment is becoming informed. You got to be as informed as you can about your investment, right? So if you know intimacy is a part of it and you don't know much about intimacy, that's where you want to start getting into some counseling so that some experienced people can talk to you about the responsibilities and the demands of what intimacy looks like so that you can be informed. Don't go into it thinking that I'll just figure it out. It's supposed to just be so natural that I can figure it out. Well, sometimes folks can't figure certain things out on their own. That's what counseling is really for. So I would say make sure that you're talking to a licensed or a skilled counselor about sexual intimacy, somebody that can really guide you in not only biblical thinking, but obviously some very pragmatic or practical, aspects of it as well. Because there's a lot of nuance here. I mean, there's a lot of nuance. Like, for instance, let me just say it like this: men are what you call polyerotic, right? And women are what you would call, in a sense, monoromantic. And all that simply means is that men are wired by nature to be turned on by what appeals to our senses, our eyes. So we're wired that way, and God designed us in that way so that that can initiate the chase. So if we'll never run after what we're not first attracted to. Here's the thing though to understand about that. Men never lose their polyeroticism after they're married. So
Okay.
we retain the ability to be turned on by what we see. That doesn't mean that
Mm,
we'll run out. It just means that we retain that ability. But it's that same ability to be turned on by what I see that keeps me turned on by what I see in my wife. And so it's really important that the wife understands that just because you cut the wedding cake is not time to be sitting around in a house duster and a bonnet on your head. You have to make sure that you constantly remain sexually attractive to your husband. Now, I'm not saying that you got to walk around like a playboy, a playgirl rabbit all day, right? I'm just saying maintain a level of attraction because your husband is designed by nature to be polyerotic, and that is the ability to be turned on by anybody in terms of the way that they look. That's not There's nothing wrong with that. That now making a move on that is where the problem is. But my whole point is that this kind of attraction is something that men are designed with, and so it's important for women in the marriage to make sure that they remain attractive in do what they can to constantly remain attractive. Now, I'm sure there's some things in the reverse that can be said about men and other things. I'm only speaking about this side because I think that is also a part of of intimacy, right? Who
Yes.
was it? It was Chapman, Gary Chapman, that wrote the book on love languages, right? And
five
he
love
talked about
languages.
discovering your spouse's love language, identifying your own, but discovering your other spouse's love language. If one person's love language is touch, and you don't like touch, you better figure that one out quick because touch is a very important thing, especially when it comes down to intimacy. And there are just some people. who are, they just don't like folks touching them, like, and they just have this cringe about it. That could be a problem. So these are the kind of things that you want to work through and work out
Absolutely.
long before you cut that cake.
Yeah.
Yeah, back
Managing
to
those
the
expectations.
yeah, and back to the original question. One of the things that I do is there's a great little book called The Act of Marriage. I make sure anybody I'm counseling, they have to read that cover to cover first because it actually goes through everything from basic biology, chemistry of marriage, and it really kind of gives them a good overall. And then I discuss that and think them because trust me, you were right. Some people are very experienced, while another person is totally inexperienced. But just kind of level the playing field so they understand this is how it actually kind of works, and then we can discuss it further. So it's very important to find a resource that you can give them. Leave a person, you can even just give them a good resource that they have that they can, kind of tackle. Okay, okay,
I have
all right,
one here, a
yeah,
celebration of sex for newlyweds. So
okay.
that's it. Yeah, it definitely goes into details about. And let me tell you who it's by. It's by Dr. Douglas E. Rosano. I don't know how to pronounce the name, but it's. I found it to be a very good book. It dives in more about the celebration of sex and just it puts your mind at ease about, okay, maybe you're not good at this or bad at this or whatever it is. It just opens you up to, again, this opportunity of exploring your spouse and the things that you need to talk about as it pertains to sex. So this would be a good book, A Celebration of Sex for Newlyweds.
And the one, The Act of Marriage, I'll give you the name before we leave, but that one is also really good because it covers all the basics. It tells you just about everything, even about basic anatomy, because I think these amazing people don't understand that. We have another
Yeah.
question. I'm going to be quick on this one. Is it important for husbands to be patient and understanding with their new wife? Is it important for husbands to be patient and understanding with their new wife?
It's important for both to understand each other, try to.
Hmm. Yep.
That's right.
Well, I
In
mean,
fact,
I
I
think the
believe.
person is probably asking.
Okay.
I guess you may have somebody that's a little shy. For example, I know the story of
Mhm.
somebody in my family who locked themselves in the bathroom for the first night of the
Okay.
marriage because they didn't know what to expect. But then, and I think patience is important. But it's really, I think, here goes again. You're really committed to this person. You love this person. You're gonna want the best for them. So you're gonna work with them, and I think that's what it takes. Working together. I mean, I think the counseling does help all of that. The pre-marriage counseling does help all of that to be smoother. All right. Anybody want to add anything to that? We have one more question after that.
The
Yeah,
right
All right.
premarital counseling will cover all of those areas. You're definitely going to
Yes.
talk
Yeah.
about sex.
Yeah. That's
So
really the key point I think we're hearing on that one
the
point. And I don't think anybody, I don't care which church you're in, if your church won't do it, find somebody else to do it. You need to get the proper counseling. The next
yeah.
question is it still possible to have a happy marriage even though you and your spouse have different parenting styles? Is it
Absolutely.
possible to have a happy marriage even though you and your spouse have different parenting styles?
yes, all
Go
things
ahead,
are
anybody.
possible. It's a matter of deciding on what you both are going to do as parents. Yes, you're going to come with different opinion, different in what you experience as children, and all of that is going to inform how you parent your own children. And so when you identify the differences, then you can decide how does this complement our marriage and our parenting, and your similarities make you that much more stronger. So I think it's just important again before you say I do, this is a part that you also talk about in premarital counseling. And this is why you do an analysis or an assessment to really look at your differences. And your differences are not to hurt you, but those differences are there to be complementary to each other. And so I think you guys are gonna have to make decisions about what we want to do as parents. What is the result that we want, the outcome? And if these are the results we want to implement these things. What we will not tolerate. All of those things are important things to talk about. Because if you're doing something that really is in disagreement with my spirit, it's going to create major conflict. And so we have to decide on what works and what doesn't work for our family.
Absolutely. Yeah, and as you talk about parenting styles, you definitely want to make sure that um, you uncover in those early conversations styles that may not necessarily be good styles. It's just like, when you have the conversation about leadership and various leadership styles, we have to be honest and discuss the fact that there are what you would call authoritarian or totalitarian leadership styles that are cultic, that are not healthy, right? So just like you've got healthy parenting styles, you also have unhealthy parenting styles. Maybe, for instance, one parent is just completely hands off. Well, that can't be obviously a healthy parenting style. So you want to make sure that you uncover that and so that both parents are hands on. And so obviously one might be doing a little bit more than the other in terms of involvement, but you don't want to be completely hands off. You obviously need to be involved, and so you want to make sure that you recognize unhealthy parenting styles. Like, for instance, what does discipline look like? The last thing you want to do is get blindsided. Like the pastor was talking about, the relative that locked himself. That's getting blindsided. And that was that could have been prevented, right? So we don't want to ever get blindsided.
Definitely could have been prevented. Yeah.
Right. So so having some conversations that don't blindside you. Maybe one has had a real traumatic experience with discipline in their early childhood, and they're like, I don't want to do any kind of disciplining. Well, that's going to be counterproductive to the raising of the children. So we got to talk about what discipline does look like. Perhaps you don't want to do any spanking. That's fine. That doesn't mean that that's the only way that discipline can occur.
Right.
But discipline has to occur. It's got to look like something, and we got to talk about that because if we don't discipline, that is an unhealthy parenting style that is going to show up later as a character flaw in the children. And so we want to work together to make sure that we do whatever we can to prevent that. So.
And again, I have to also state that while you're in marriage, again, you're living life, so you don't know what's going to come up. And so children also tend to become our little mirrors and pull stuff out of us that we didn't know was there. And so you definitely want to identify what's a problem and decide together. Again, you're always coming back to the table about what is going to work for your family. And this is why we talk about forgiveness, reconciliation. These are the things that are just going to be incorporated in your lives together because it's a part of living life together in relationship. And so always come back to that table. There's an opportunity to decide, okay, this is not working. We have to do it differently.
Yeah.
And that's really important. That's really important in communication and coming back together so you can then pull it all together. Go ahead.
And I think also culturally, you got to look at a cultural background and how you were raised and that stuff, because I think also it is very important that we're not in the middle of talking about this in front of the children, and now we're correcting each other in front of the children, because they pick up on that and now they can use it because now they have seen it that, hey, they're not agreeing. Kids are pretty smart, and so you got to talk about that stuff. Like Pastor Richards was saying, I mean, like, for instance, I had a different way that I thought discipline is supposed to happen from Sister Donna, and culturally I'm from, and it could be, again, from whatever was dished out to you as a child. And so now you got to make sure that you're not coming in and it doesn't look like abuse. And so what you have to do is discuss those things before you get married. Or even when you get married and you're like, okay, I never talked about this. It has to be something that happened behind closed door, and it's not happening in front of the kids, because then that can cause friction. because now that child can say, you know what, I'm going to always go to this parent because they're a little bit more softer, and now we have confusion in the house. So you got to be on one page, and I think that's what's going to help. I think we have some more questions that are popping up, but Sister Suzette, real quick before Bishop reads the next question, what is one of the things that you would possibly talk to, especially because we know that there's females that have gone through traumatic things in their life, and that can hamper their view on sexual intimacy, so it's not always in a way where they don't want to have sex, but because they have gone through something traumatic. How would you counsel
Yes.
someone like that that wants to get married and want to enjoy that, but each time that they're thinking about it, they're thinking about the perpetrator? How would you
Yes.
counsel that person? And my second one would be for Dr. Lang, because sometimes the men always think they're coming in and they're the stallion, but then something is going on with their libido. How would you counsel that man in that way, Dr. Lang? Sister Suzette, you could take
Okay.
it first.
Okay. Well, as it pertains to trauma, whenever I do counseling of couples, when things come up, I also, regardless of whether things come up or not, I do individual counseling with them also. But I think it's important when we do find that there's something that is potentially a disorder or any traumatic attachment disorder, anything like emotional attachment disorder, or anything like that. We want to address anything that is going to create dysfunction in the relationship. But it's also for that individual. So yes, you definitely need to have ongoing counseling with that individual. Talk to them about if they're ready to really walk through the trauma, and again, dealing with the potential pitfalls or triggers that might bring this trauma to the forefront or this event to the forefront. And again, I've dealt with this in a marriage as well. Sometimes things don't show up until later, like a traumatic experience. Sometimes they don't remember for some reason because they were protected. The way the brain works, it's just that fight, flight, or freeze response. And so, some things don't come up until later, but we have to really deal with anything that's going to be a potential dysfunction for the couple and help that individual within the relationship. So they may need their own counseling ongoing that pertains to that issue.
Yeah, yes, it's really important to go back again to communication. And once you identify problems and issues, then we're going to have to decide how to deal with them. And that shows there's libido issues on both sides. I mean, I have tons of
Yeah.
male and female with libido issues, and you just have to work through with each one. Now, the one thing that I have to say, which is one other thing I profess, if, say, for example, one person, I mean, their libido is great, everything's fine, the other person going through an issue, you have to realize that your job is to fulfill the other person. So therefore, you're going to do whatever you can to get that person, to the place, whether you get in their head, get in their
Right.
heart, get wherever you're going to get into, all right, to help
All
them,
right.
to bring them to the place where you need them to get. And I think that's really the thing. It's one thing that and I've told all of the couples is throw out your desires for a while. Just don't even think about yourself. And then focus on the other person and how am I going to help that person to be the
Yeah.
best person, the best at everything. And I think, can you imagine if two people, this one is doing that, this one is doing that, don't they must come together? It must work if you are able to do that. All right? All right. Anybody
That's
want to comment on that quickly? And then I have a couple more questions. Yeah.
Well, Pastor
right.
Anything
Richard
else?
said it. He talked about the love language. And
Yeah.
it's
Exactly.
really about how can I love my spouse how they should be loved. Instead of
Yeah.
coming from
Yeah.
my perspective, really about how to love them. I have to love them how they need to be loved. And so
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that.
Yep, very good. Now, I want a short answer on this next question because we kind of covered it before. But what's the Christian outlook on people who compromise themselves? For example, they compromise and then become like find themselves in depression. How do we advise such a person? You kind of answered before, but I just wanted us to refresh. As a person who is, because of whatever an issue, they're just saying, okay, I'm just going to sit here in this corner, you can do whatever, and not really looking for their own fulfillment. How do we advise them?
I'm trying to get the question. So they want advice on someone who may be depressed and not.
Yeah,
I'm
somebody
not
basically,
understanding.
they've compromised so much and given, in this relationship that they're now in
Okay.
a depressed mode. And especially, they also feel that they have to stay there because of their fate.
So they
How
need
would you
an
advise?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Again, you guys, it's really dealing with the issues in the relationship, having a sit down together. And again, we can't tackle every problem. So there's an exercise that even comes from the Prepare and Rich program that I mentioned that allows the couple to prioritize what the problem is that they're going to deal with. So maybe we choose 4 problems and we pick the one that's a priority, and we're going to try to deal with this problem. And again, and so there are different exercises that can be done to help them work out some of the issues they're facing. There's also, okay, let's identify what some of our needs are, our wishes, and see how the other person can meet you halfway or meet you to the point of meeting that need. How is that person able to meet that need? So again, it all boils down to communication and conflict resolution.
Right. I agree.
Amen. All right. So it's a really good point is, and again, we keep relating to it, and it's really important, as we can see then, that you must communicate. You cannot, make this marriage work by I'm sitting in my corner, I'm in my small corner, and you in yours. It's not going to work, and you have to come
Yeah.
together. We had a nice comment. Somebody said, even though, actually, this is from Susan, even though our hubby and her are from similar cultures, our family cultures may vary differently in many ways too, which is an important point. So you may think, yeah, we're both Jamaicans, but one set of Jamaicans do things differently too. And my family grew up in church, your family grew up in wherever, and it's really important these discussions. One of the things that I actually do in my pre-counseling is I actually let them give me all the details about their family. Each side have to write out all the details, where they come from, what they do, and you really you have to be. We need some culturally competent counselors, which is the issue that I think we run into too. And I think we have to redo church as we know it. All right, we have to redo, these religious things as we know it, and start dealing with people as people, because that's really who they are. They're humans. All right, we're gonna have Philip, you can take it away for any last minute question or last minute comments.
One of the things just to close out is I want to say, liberate yourself from all of these religiosity things that are not biblical. Like Pastor Richards would tell you, sola scriptura. It has to be from the Bible, and so many times, for instance, nobody should put a date on when you should get married. You know what? You meet each other tomorrow. You got to get married in 2 months. You got to get married. This is the church rule. You got to liberate yourself from that stuff. You need
Yeah.
time to kind of know someone and stuff like that. And you guys are not allowed to go out by yourself. Somebody has to come with you all the time. I mean, I'm sorry, I don't join that type of ministry. Not every time that me and her is going out, somebody has to tag along. You gotta, and I'm not saying go leave your church. If that's what you're into, that's fine. But I'm just saying don't use that to judge every relationship, because that's what happens. We get into this marriage, and then you get married in 2 months, and you have no clue who you married. She could come in the bedroom, take off all her false hair, her false teeth, and now you're like, who are you? You gotta get time to know somebody so you don't end up in that mess. Take some time to really know somebody. You're not gonna know everything, but at least the basics. What this
Yeah.
person like? What are some of the trigger? What's turned this person off? What if I say this? And we gotta, we can save people from divorce if we would just be honest with people and stop holding people hostage to our thinking and what we think should be the model of everybody's marriage. Well, it worked for mine, so it should work for everybody else. And the last time we were on, Pastor Richardson, we talked about this.
Yeah.
Is drop that whole theory, man. Talking about I'm waiting for the perfect one, and then you have to settle. Stop waiting for the perfect. If you see somebody, man, you like her, take your shot. You know, I'm
Come
not saying
on.
don't go with God's leading, but go talk to her. Stop waiting for a bright light to shine through the window. I'm waiting on this light, and God is going to show me in the perfect beauty of his holiness. No, go over there and say something to her. You know, and stop
Shoot your
playing
shot.
games. You know,
Shoot
Yeah.
your
All right.
shot.
Yep. All right,
You know?
Pastor. Any last words, Pastor?
Yeah, I would just build on what Minister Richards is saying there. That you know, and I'd like to just talk for a second men and young ladies who are looking to get married, and they're at that point where maybe they don't even know anybody, but they do want to get married. Let me just say, the first thing is a desire to get married is a good thing, and embrace that. Don't allow people to fill your head with a whole lot of pre-qualifiers. You know, they'll come at you with, well, the reason that God hasn't sent that one for you is because you got to get this part of your life straight, and you got to do this, and then you're constantly trying to live up to meeting some sort of pre-qualifier to make yourself worthy of marriage. And I'm not saying don't work on things. I'm just saying don't allow people to have you thinking that marriage is essentially some reward for crossing all of your T's and dotting all of your I's. That's just not how it works. And you know, so embrace the fact that you want to get married. That's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with that. And you know, again, the other thing is, as the brother said, stop waiting around for God to tell you what to do, brother. I mean, you got all these available sisters in the church. Shoot your shot, man. What you waiting on? And I'm going to tell you, if you keep standing around, the unsaved fella is gonna start hollering at the sister in the church because he sees something that looks good, and why not? If he sees it and obviously sees some value, and you see it, and you're not moving on it, I mean, you're almost setting your sister up to limit opportunities because you won't shoot your shot. Man, we need brothers to start. You did it when you were out in the world. You saw something you like, you made a move, you got the phone number. Now you got saved, and all of a sudden cat got your tongue. Come on. Start making a move, right? Stop trying to act like marriage is not something that you want because you think it's spiritual maybe one day and all this other stuff. Listen, it is nothing wrong with desiring to be married. And that's all I'm saying. Don't allow yourself to get talked out of a good desire because you think somebody wants to hear something else or whatever. Listen, make your move. You see somebody, go talk to them. The worst thing that can happen is you find out that this person is just not compatible for you. And then you move on. But at the end of the day, you've got to take more ownership. If you want to talk about Ruth and Boaz, then let's really talk about it in a real way. That didn't come together because God was the one orchestrating the details. That came together because Naomi was the one orchestrating it. She set it up, and she put Ruth in a position to become noticed. So Ruth was strategically positioned so that she can get seen. So I want to encourage those sisters out there that are losing hope, and they're thinking, well, nobody notices me. You want to make sure that you're strategically in positions where available men will notice you. And right, so Boaz was available, but that doesn't mean that he would have noticed Ruth if she was not strategically placed in a position to where she could be seen. And so utilize singles conferences, singles ministries, and other kinds of places of interest where other single people of like value and conviction are, so that you can be noticed. If you're constantly hanging around married people, ain't nobody gonna notice you. If you're constantly in places where, let's say you go to a church and there's no single brothers there. I'm not saying leave your church. I'm saying go join 2 or 3 singles groups from some other churches and at least fellowship with them. But don't sit around and never do anything, right? You have to do. You got to make a move that at least strategically puts yourself in a position to become noticed. And
Yeah.
so if we take some of the hocus pocus out of it, we realize that we've got a lot more that we can actually work with and utilize than what oftentimes we're being told, other than just sit around and wait on the Lord kind of a deal. That's just not proactive. And that's going to leave you frustrated and desperate, and possibly in a situation where you make a desperate decision because you done got tired of waiting around. And so I just want to equip you and inform you that there are a number of different things that you can do to put yourself in a position to be noticed, right? So that's my encouragement.
Real quick before Sister Suze close, one of the things that I want you guys to follow Pastor Richardson, and possibly if you're looking to deepen your spirituality about the Bible, I would highly recommend, like he said before, that he works alongside National Presenter with Logos, and I think one of the things sometimes is that breaking down the scripture is very important, and it's not just in marriage, but to understand the Bible and to use it in context. And I believe this dear brother here, he has some really good resources. So I mean, if you're trying to get more into the word, you're trying to study more on outside of marriage, and you really want to know the word of God, I believe he can help you with some great tools. And Pastor Richardson, if you just want to give them your information, how they can reach out to you. I think the 30% on the one that I got is already gone now, correct?
That is true, but it is actually I think the online discount is now 15%. But if they email me, I can look into getting them an additional discount, just a preferred discount, just by coming through me. I'm gonna put my email here. And another thing they can do is go to logos.com. I'm actually sending it to you via chat. Logos.com/Damon. If they go there, they'll see my special discount online as well. But email me, and we can possibly set up a demo so that I can show them what Bible study tools actually look like and how they can actually help them. You don't have to be a preacher. Any lay person with an interest in learning more about the Word of God, definitely. These are tools that you really want to look at in order to be able to augment and to further your understanding of God's Word. Logos.com, logos.com/Damon, DAMON. You can go to my landing page and see what some of those libraries look like. But reach out to me at damon.richardson@faithlife.com, and we can kind of set up a demo and just have a little bit more of a conversation about what you're looking to do and what some spiritual solutions might look like in terms of a Logos library. So definitely reach out to me. I'd love to have that conversation with you.
All right. And any last words from Suzette?
Well, a lot of great things were said tonight. I'm very honored that I was a part of this wonderful panel. And I just would say to the individual who is in that mindset of, maybe they're frustrated and saying, I can't get anyone. It's important that you do explore what are your ideals and what are those things that are maybe stopping you from just getting what is that thing that you think you should be having by now. If you would believe that you should be married, there are certain things you can't just sit down and expect it to happen. It's just going to come to you. You do have the power of choice. And I think a lot of us young women who were raised in church, we were not told what our power is. We were told a lot of what not to do, and a lot of rules. And so you have to understand your value and your worth. And let us explore what are those myths and expectations that you have that you think you need to meet in order for that to happen. And let's lower some of those, because perhaps that's what is stopping your from fulfilling what you want.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I have a couple questions. I'm just going to answer them, but let's say you're here. Is how do you deal with a partner who is mentally unwell during this pandemic? And again, I think you will deal with them the same way you would even if we didn't have a pandemic, by, if you can direct them to the source of help. There's a lot of counselors out there. And I think, you can even start with your primary doctor is a good source. Sometimes, the church kind of poo-poo doctors at times, but it's a really important source that is there. Then they can help you with some direction. And the other one is, should you look to your parents' marriage for expectations? And if it's a great marriage, then you can look to it. If it's not that good of a marriage, then you need to, research and focus and get help elsewhere as well. Because, there's some great marriages out there, and you can learn a lot from them. And there's some that are not so good that you could get in trouble if you pattern yourself according to that. But I think the key point is, as well, I'm just going to sum up a couple of the key points as I heard them tonight. The one thing that came through loud and clear was premarital counseling. All right. And I think make sure, and I don't care if your church doesn't agree with it, we're suggesting that you get some counseling, because it's going to help you, and then the same people who don't want you to get counseling, when you come back to them when you're in trouble, they're going to tell you to go and pray. But prayer is good, but, faith without works is dead. And faith is an action word, and I think I heard that coming through as well. So for example, if you expect, you got to make yourself seen, right? So the faith is that God is going to provide somebody, but the works is you're going to put yourself so the person can see you. To break it down simply, and I'm just really excited that everybody really came with some good source this evening, and we're going to also put have a resource site on our website and on our Facebook page, so we'll put all of your information there as well, so everybody can be able to read and see it. So our team, with one person, but that will have resources available for all those that are listening and joining us, and we really want to thank you all in a special way for taking the time out. I know we went a little bit longer. We usually go an hour, but hey, you go as the Lord tells you to stop, right? And we could go on all night, but we want to stop right now. But we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing, and all those who are listening out there, we thank you for joining us as well. Make sure you share. We will be continuing our weekly program, Premier's Turning Point, and we want to make sure everything available. I'm sure we will revisit this topic pretty soon, and we'll definitely have our guests back. Any last word, Minister Richards?
No, just want to thank each and everyone for coming on tonight. It was a blessing. Pastor Richardson, always a great time when you join us. Thank you again for coming on tonight. Sister Suzette, I know you could do it. Thank you again for joining. And of course, Bishop, thank you again for having me as the co-host. I really appreciate it. And I think we definitely helped somebody tonight.
Yeah. Amen. Pastor Richardson, you were trying to say something?
Oh, no. I when you said Richards, I immediately jumped the gun because I thought you were.
Oh, okay.
No, you're good. You're good.
All right. But thank you all again. The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord cause his face to smile upon you and give you peace both now and forevermore. Everybody, happy marriages. God bless you.
Go make babies. Turning Point family, what an awesome time we just had. To all our first-time guests, we truly appreciate you for joining our live broadcast. We would like to hear from you, so please send us your comments, questions, or testimonies of how this program has impacted your life. Our email address is info@pflmi.org. Finally, if you feel led at any time to give to this ministry, please visit us at pflmi.org and click on the tab for donations. We're looking forward to meeting with you live on next week's program. Have a blessed and prosperous weekend.